tonight, our third series lecture is called Altadena's Trees, Saving Our Past for Our Future. And as we reflect on this role of trees playing and the role that trees play in shaping our neighborhoods and sustaining our environment and telling the story of place, we're kind of reminded that preservation is about more than buildings, right? It's about landscape and memories and resilience. And in the wake of the Eaton Canyon fire, many of Altadena's trees were lost. But amid that destruction, and inspiring recovery efforts have been taking shape, each addressing a different kind of facet of how we care for our landscape moving forward. So one of those efforts is the Angel City Lumber. I don't know if anybody has heard of that. They were recently featured in several different publications. They're working to salvage trees damaged by the fire and transform them into usable lumber, preserving both the material and the memory of Altadena's urban forest. And it's a powerful example of how we can honor what was lost by giving it new purpose. So to continue this work, they're seeking a site, and this is where I'm going to do a little plug for them, because they're seeking a site where logs can be stored and milled on site. For them, the ideal location would be, approximately 4 acres of flat land, zoned industrial or light industrial, and available for 4 years. Again, if you have any leads on a location or you know someone, I'd be glad to connect with you after this. So while Angel City Lumber is focused on reclaiming and repurposing trees already lost, Altadena Green is working to protect what remains and to shape what comes next. Altadena Green is the grassroots organization formed in response to the fire, made up of volunteer landscape professionals with deep ties in the community. And their mission is to preserve and restore the character, culture, and heritage of Altadena's tree canopy and to prevent the removal of healthy, mature trees that embody the spirit of the place. They're helping coordinate local efforts, sharing resources with residents, and guiding thoughtful replanting as we begin as we bring Altadena's landscape back to life. Not just with new trees, but with care, equity, and a long-term vision. So looking ahead, I'm excited to invite you to the next installment. This will be the 4th installment of Altadena Revealed. It's happening on Friday, June 27th, so mark your calendars at 7 p.m. We will be back at Altadena Library. The topic for this will be Outlaws of Altadena, the criminal prosecutions of colorful contrarians. It is a lively and entertaining look at some of the most rebellious figures in our community's past, and Hans from Altadena Heritage will be doing that talk. So now I'm pleased to introduce Valerie Zavala. She's the Secretary of Altadena Heritage, and she is going to introduce our speaker for the evening. Valerie.
Thank you so much for all being here and appreciating my dog. I got stuck with him tonight, and he also really appreciates salami. Thank you for joining us for the 3rd lecture in Altadena Revealed series. We welcome Stephanie Landregan. She's a nationally recognized landscape architect, educator, and longtime public servant. Stephanie currently serves as director of the Landscape Architecture and Horticulture and Gardening program at UCLA Extension, where she leads courses in community-based design, water-wise landscapes, and green infrastructure. She has years of experience working with the Wildland-Urban Interface. She was their chief landscape architect for the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. That's a mouthful. Stephanie brings critical perspective on how landscape design intersects with fire resilience, sustainability, and community well-being. As co-founder of Altadena Green, a grassroots fire response initiative, she has been at the forefront of efforts to save and reimagine Altadena's urban forests. She will tell us about the essential role that trees play in fire recovery, climate resilience, and cultural memory, offering a timely and thoughtful conversation on the vulnerabilities and possibilities of Altadena's landscape, past, present, and future. So please join me in welcoming Stephanie Landregan for Altadena's Trees, Saving Our Past for Our Future.
Thank you all very much, and I'm pleased to be here tonight. How many of you are from Altadena? Welcome. Thank you so much. I know it's a hard place to be right now, and my heart goes out, and we're doing everything we can at Altadena Green to help with that. So, how many of you have a tree that you fell in love with? Excellent. Thank you. Yes. And so think about that tree and think about what you would write a love letter to that tree. And so many people who are in Altadena right now have only their trees left. And so those trees are like the loves of their life. So I'm going to sort of talk about how we're responding to that. So Altadena Heritage was instrumental in becoming very much a driving force in providing the canopy that is up there in Altadena. There are many areas that already had trees, but the fact that they were bringing equity to a lot of areas in Altadena is very important. They did it with the Arroyo Seco Foundation. They did it with Amigo de los Rios. There are a lot of people who have been planting trees up in Altadena because it can be very hot. So it cools, and it also provides a lot of oxygen. So I'm going to talk about trees, the importance of trees, but it has been part of the legacy of Altadena to take care and to introduce trees to the community. So much so, and we know Altadena is not a city. Altadena is a community. But guess what? Altadena is a tree city. So because of this effort, it has been acknowledged by the Arbor Day Foundation as a tree city. This is very special. And this is the legacy that was affected by the fires. So on the night of January 7th, the fire went structure to structure. It did not go tree to tree because it was an urban fire. And this is what was left on one side and the other. Now what you see in this picture is there are many of the trees that survived. Many of the trees survived. This is self-pacing, sorry. And what is amazing to me, and these are amazing trees, these are ancient trees, and the fire was not a wildfire. So this is an important thing to note. It was an urban conflagration, and that is when it goes structure to structure and not tree to tree. And anyone who tells you that the wildfire took out Altadena, they are wrong. And there are many, many fire people who agree. There are scientists who agree. And so how are we going to respond? Because how do we still keep our canopy? This is a very sad picture. This is a picture of all of the homes we lost. And as you can see, there are areas in Altadena where the trees also were burned with the homes. And then there are areas where the cactus have survived, where the trees have survived. In fact, this tree was burned by the home. And this tree, which is on Lake, and if any of you all have been up recently, it's still there. This is a terrific oak. It's a little above Mariposa. And the amazing thing about this tree is as you look at the back of the tree, you can see that it was singed by the home. But there are the deodar cedars. This cedar is just terrific. And many of these trees are now landmarks because they're what is left. So they become signposts for us and for areas. Oh, I'm going to turn over there by the stone pine. I'm looking at the coyote underneath the oak tree. So we start to use the trees as signposts, and they become part of our lexicon. And they become more, again, part of our landscape. And here's another beautiful oak that survived. This one is again on Lake. This is the same picture, I'm sorry. although on the other side is actually a stone pine that we were not able to save, and it was fine. So let's talk again about the importance of trees. Altadena heritage and Altadenas know about the importance of trees. That's why we have chosen to live in Altadena, and in some of it is the urban-wildland interface, but some of it isn't. And this was an interesting way to see how fires are going to be. Because if you live in Altadena, there was not a single fire engine there. Yeah. We're going to talk about defensible space. Nobody was defending any space because of the winds. I'm not casting blame. I'm telling you a story that's true. And so what was the first thing that happened? After the fire, I walked up and spent time with my friend Gwen. And Gwen had nothing left. She had an adobe home, and many of her trees were fine, but when we got up there, I mean really within a week, Edison was up there, cutting down trees, trying to put up new telephone poles, and we caught them. Why are you taking down that tree? I mean, it used to not be in the way of the lines. Why is it in the way of the lines right now? Well, it is. No, it isn't. So you have this conversation, and when we were, all of a sudden, there were like 6 of us who were together, and we're like, what is happening to the trees? So we started to see, and you'll notice right here. Can I move that? Oh. All right, if you look on the tree, there's an X that's white. Yeah. We started to see white markings on trees. And we're like, what are these markings for? And what we did is we went to the EPA, because you know where they are on Woodbury, the center, and we said, what are these markings? And they're like, we don't know. It's probably the Corps. And then we talked to the Corps, and they went, no, it's EPA. And we talked to the county, and they said, we don't know, ask the Corps or the EPA. So nobody was being told anything. And their trees that were the things that were left. We already knew that we would have to do demo on the homes, but we didn't know what was going to happen to the trees, and that is a very important thing for us to know. So the EPA was there, and they were marking the trees, we finally found out. And these are what the marks mean. Now the interesting thing about these marks is they were not put there by an arborist. They were not put there by anybody qualified. They were put there for safety only. But the story is corrected further. So what happens from this is the Army Corps says, we're going to start phase 2. I think Colonel Swinson did a great job. I have him on auto dial. Whenever I find something happening up there, I call him and I go, I'm sorry, there are people cutting down trees again. And he actually calls me back. This is hard to believe. And he has a lot of people he calls back, so I think he's a really responsible person. And he goes, oh, those aren't ours. Ours are blue, the blue dots of death. So here are the blue dots of death. Now, what's interesting about the blue dots of death, especially in this one picture here, which I don't know if you can see it, it also has white marks on it. And so we found out Edison was cutting trees. The contractor for the Army Corps of LA was putting blue dots on trees. The contractor who are private contractors, because not everybody wanted the Army Corps, was coming in. And Joe from Kentucky was here with his saw in the back, said, I'll cut down that tree really quick for you at $500 and you don't have to pay anybody. So we have all these people cutting down trees. And we're like, how are we going to stop this? Now, activism is when you see something that needs an action and you take action. So we considered ourselves little tree activists because we weren't going to let all these trees go. So here's a coast live oak. It has the blue dot of death on it. But you can see the X. And you see the blue dot and you see the orange tag, which is a skew, which they would just take their little, scanner and go, yeah, kill it. And the problem is, they were not using arborists then. They were following the white markings and using them instead of doing due diligence. So I have Rebecca Lotta on the slide here helping me. And Rebecca is an arborist. She's terrific. She's growing up here. And I'm not an arborist, but I have taken arboriculture classes. And we're like, what's going on here? These marks, and then they started tagging them. They didn't even know what the trees were. So we have a tag on an oak, one of our magnificent oaks, and it says, I'm a Chinese elm. And we're like, no, you're not. You're not a Chinese elm. And we had another tree that they said, this is a magnolia. And we're like, no, you're not. You're a carob. And so there were all these mismarked trees, and we went to the Army Corps, and we took them banana nut bread. Always take banana nut bread when you want to have a serious conversation. Sit down with your homemade banana nut bread, and they're like, no, I can't have it. Next thing you know, it's gone. The banana nut bread started the conversation because we said, here are the streets that we have done reviews on. These trees are mismarked. These trees are viable. They do not have the blue dots of death on them. And they said, well, we've hired professionals. And I said, I don't think you've hired professionals. And it turns out they had not had their subcontractor to the Corps check whether these individuals were truly arborists, if they were certified in California. Because we have the most diverse plant palette in the world, and I'm not exaggerating. We live in a Mediterranean biome, and California is more diverse than any place else on Earth. And that also means we can grow anything we damn well want, which is not good, and we do, but the whole climate here is so special. So these folks did not know what they were doing. They had no idea about the resiliency of our trees. They had no idea what our trees were. And they were getting paid by the tree. And we started to have, I would say, a come to Jesus talk. A come to whoever you really think you should come to and talk to when you're breaking some holy law. We sat with them and we said, this has to stop. And I will tell you, it's kind of funny. You don't think the Army Corps, they're scared of 6 old ladies. Especially if you bring banana nuts. So we sat down and we had this talk and said, we need to talk to Barger's office because this can't go on. And we cannot keep losing these trees because they were being cut down. And you all know this, you saw all of the Instagrams, you heard about Corvallis and all of these heartbreaking coming back and assuming that the right of entry form that you had filled out was not going to take everything on your whole site away, but only within the burn scar and the trees that you thought were going to go. And so we had a talk, and what is interesting is that these were redwoods. And of course you see the marks here that mean no hazard. Actually, people didn't even know what the white marks meant. And they had the blue dot there, and the red ones are ours. So we took 20 arborists out, volunteer arborists, for 8 weeks on Saturdays, because, that was the only time we could do it, because we all had jobs. And we started making a list, taking pictures of every barcode, and saying, sorry, Charlie, these are living, and you need to keep them. And we went to Barger's office, and this is one of our Saturdays. These are all volunteer arborists. And some of them from the Palisades, some of them are from down in Orange County. And so we started a little group, and it's called Altadena Green. And we decided to call ourselves Altadena Green because we realized that to keep Altadena Green, we had to activate. And so we started an organization, and we put up a nice web page. We made little business cards, and then we started giving the core hell. And we've been very successful because what we realized is press helps. We had really good press. And I was very fortunate. I worked for the University of California, and they were pretty excited about what I was doing, and so I had a couple of television interviews, and people kept going, Altadena Green, Altadena Green, and are people really cutting down the trees? And you know, when you had a couple of reporters coming around, people stopped cutting down the trees. So that was a serendipitous event. And so let's just talk about the trees we have. So why are we saving old trees? And that's what one of the arborists said, why are you saving these old trees? And I said, really? Do you know how long that tree has been here? Do you know how many fires it's already been through? Yeah. Do you know if it's alive? These trees absorb CO2. Do you know how much oxygen our trees are producing up there in Altadena? A huge amount. Shade. We know, if you were out there, I don't know if many of you know some of our friends here, but if you're out there and you're having your house leveled and you have them out there and you no longer have trees, my guarantee is it's much hotter than it was before the fire. And that is a problem. And also, if we have any rains, we no longer have the trees that infiltrate the water that actually capture it. All of the benefits, 221 species are supported by oak trees. So, and that's one of the things you love about each of you all in your wonderful tree that you wrote your love letter to. Had a couple of birds in it, probably had evil squirrels, other wildlife. So we want to save old trees because these mature trees we may not ever be able to replace. We don't know how long, and you're going to hear there's this mitigation. So risk is either you take a risk or you don't take a risk. But there's things to do in between. So if your tree is considered a risk, you can either take it down, which the Horticulture does only, or you can say, maybe it just needs trimming. Maybe I can make this work. It's not in their vocabulary. So what happens is that we had a goal to reduce how many trees are removed. Now, this is a property owner's right, and I am not going to bully somebody to keep their tree. But Tetra Tech is bullying people to take out their tree.
And lying to them.
And they lie to them, and we have been working really hard to get this one individual sent back to wherever they're from. But the reality is that two competing pieces of information. The Army Corps says they are required to take out a tree if it probably will die in 5 years. And what does the city or the county of Los Angeles say? An oak tree may not be taken out unless with a permit, because you have to leave it there because it will probably recover in 2 years. Wow. And that oak tree permit has not been rescinded. Yeah. In fact, Catherine Varger, when we did this, there's somebody loving on their tree. This is a love letter to a tree. I just thought you'd see it. This tree was part of a bunch of trees. They gathered together to save this house. This is the north face. This is the east face. And you can see the only thing that burned was the fence. So trees have been in many places where they actually served as ember breaks. It's called a vegetative barrier. Not always. It really depends on the winds. Come on, let's face it. If you were up there, the winds were going every which way. We're not gonna make proclaim anything as the gospel. But there are a lot of little probabilities out there. Here's another area that, it's up near Mariposa, near the Triangle. These trees saved these houses because of the winds. And look around. I mean, you cannot underestimate the value of a mature tree. Now, you think a 24-inch bunch of boxes are going to do that?
Yeah.
They're going to burn.
Yeah.
So what we have right now is so valuable, so precious. We really need to be saving it. And there is the only tree that burned.
Wow.
And we think it might be a eucalyptus, and if it is, it'll probably come back because they're resistant. So what we saw were a lot of people really upset because these trees are vanishing, and they'd gone up. Not everybody is staying in Altadena. Their homes aren't there.
Yeah.
They're in Hollywood, they're in Glendale, they're in South Pass, they're in Arcadia, some of them, who knows where you are, being able to be sheltered and loved. But when you come back and you find your tree cut, you're not very happy. And so people are putting up signs to no avail.
Oh, no.
And it's complicated. I'm going to give you the Army Corps story. Is the tree within the ash footprint? And if it is, it might be a hazard to the demolition person. Was the tree bad already? Right, I'm not going to admit that. However, there could be trees that actually were dormant, and these folks didn't realize they were dormant, not dead. I mean, I actually have a t-shirt that says, I'm a California native, I'm not dormant, I'm not dead, I'm dormant. It happens. Sometimes I'm dormant for a long period too. So the property owner needs to be willing to see if the tree's going to recover. So it's a risk. You can take a calculated risk, or you can sell your Tesla properties. No, I'm sorry. There's all sorts of risks we take. And we're smart adults, we know what to do. So this is a before, phase 2, and after. Now this tree may not have survived, but it could have with some mitigation. It's quite possible it could have been trimmed. So this is what the Corps uses. Which trees will be removed? And it gives you all the reasons it might fall over on the house that you no longer have. It's true, this is the whole premise. That's what they'll say, it might fall over on your house, and you're like, well, I'm sorry, I thought you just cleared this. There's not It's like you don't know who you're talking to. The other is, even if it's not near a house, what is its other hazardous potential? So they use a lot of language because they want to prevent hazards. And that is their goal, and that's not a bad goal. But it's also not a negotiable goal. So we were like, we're negotiating with you. The blue dots of death are not going to win. And so we got new dots. So we went in, we met with Barger's office, and we got new dots. And why did the dots go away? Go back. So the dots that we got, and the promise we got, was the blue dots of death. If you signed the waiver and decided to take a risk, you could add it to your right of entry, or you could present it to your demolition crew when they came to remove the foundation and all of the rest of the burn scar. And then you said, I want to keep this oak tree, I think it's going to live, I will trim it up at another time, put the brown dots on it, and then put the yellow dots on it. Now, this was working until about 2 weeks ago. It's a constant battle. And it's because I think they're trying to be expedient. And that expediency sometimes takes over from previous agreements, and you have to get re-agreements. It's a terrible challenge and you want to feel like bopping your head against the wall. But what we have, the tree waiver option is still available. But now they want you, after they clear your site, they're going to come in with another group of supposedly track arborists, which is tree risk assessment certified. And they will look at the trees that they were not able to reach because the burn scar is dangerous. We all know this. You're really not supposed to walk on the burn scar because you might have a basement. You could have something that fell in. It's very dangerous. You never know how many nails you have in your house until you have a fire. And you have thousands of nails all over the place. So it's very dangerous. And so now they have new arborists coming out and reassessing right after they've cleared. And then they'll call you and they'll say, we're coming by tomorrow to take out 6 oaks. And you're like, what? I live up in Paso right now. Are you crazy? 7 o'clock. And you're like, well, are you going to have coffee? What is going on here? And they have been taking out trees this way. So that is why just recently, my speed dial called up the colonel, and we had a coming to Buddha meeting in which we said, Buddha does not like this. And he said, well, we'll have to talk to him. I said, we're talking to him right now. You and I were calling him. And we called up ECC, who hires Tetra Tech. And we said, no more oaks. No more oaks. You've got to leave them for 2. Unless they're in the burn scar, no more oaks. So we don't know what's going to happen because there's 6 of us. And we drive around and we look and see who's out there with the chainsaw, and whether it's ECC, and people call us. And there's only 6 of us right now. But I am retiring from UCLA, and I will be out there every day in July. Because there aren't enough of us, but we have done some very cool things. There's an LA waiver, that's what you can do, but this waiver that the LA has right now is so you can remove your oak tree. Nobody's getting waivers. And that is because not only is ECC and Tetra Tech not getting waivers, but other people aren't getting waivers. So we need to really create the response of enforcing our oak tree protection. It doesn't protect any of our other trees. It's not protecting some of our glorious stone pines that have survived. And stone pines come from a fire regime too. And so do Canary Island pines. In the Canary Islands, it burns like every 20 years, just like here. And these trees are resilient. But it only protects the oaks. So why are we not enforcing it? Because regional planning has kind of let it go by the side for expediency. So we are saying it's no longer an emergency. It's time to bring in some normalcy. And so here are our accomplishments. We were able to get a waiver for tree removals if you would like to keep your trees. We have done a lot of education. We have trained Tetra Tech's arborists to know our trees. Free, we did this. We have trained, we've had one training that was for homeowners on how to identify trees. We are going to have more of these. Okay. And then the other, we've done pro bono and then a lot of low-cost consulting on trees for people. Because we do talk to people, we say, your insurance may pay for this, and if your insurance will pay for it, that'll help us do more pro bono when we really have people who do not have insurance and they can't take care of it. We really want to save the trees. And then lastly, we finally became a 501c3. So here's a little tree education. You can find everything out on a select tree. It's the Altadena tree list. I'll let you take scans of this. so you know you can find your trees. All right, this is from Cal Poly. So we have this forest inventory, which we know that we have 220 species and maybe more. We have 123 genera, and the difference between genera and species is, I'm Stephanie Landregan. Landregan is the genera. Stephanie is the species, and my sister Deborah is another species. And we knew that as children. So that's how you know the difference. And this has a misplaced comma because we have 143,000 trees in inventory. The difference of a comma. It's 143,000. That's how many trees we had in inventory. We don't know how many we have left. We're still counting. And now the locally native trees, we have 23 natives to just this area. Wow. We have 7 species native to California that aren't specific to the Eaton Canyon. We have the coast live oak, which how many of you all know the coast live oak well? If you don't, you really need to go on a date with an oak. They are fabulous. We have the canyon oak. If you don't like the coastline, go to the canyon oak. This is endemic to Eaton Canyon. This is a beautiful oak. It has the prettiest little acorn you've ever seen in Washington. We have the California sycamore. All of us know this and love it. That has terrific bark. We have the incense cedar, Calocedrus decurrens. This is our only native cedar. It's quite beautiful. It smells, some people go, it's not a very pretty tree. And I'm like, don't get it out of here. I am a landscape architect. I know that there are trees that people consider dirty, trees that people consider ugly. You want to know what the trees think of you? I don't think you're very nice. You put them in little 4-inch things in the middle of a sidewalk and expect them to live. Come on. We have the coastal redwoods, which is beautiful. We do have some that are around here, and they do well, but mostly in the canyon or in the cooler areas. And we have questions about fire and effects on trees, so I hope you do, because I'm going to talk to you about that now. So there's a fire effects information system that you can look up, and it's theforestservice.usda.gov/forward, and that will tell you about different species that are fire and the effects that fire have on them. So the coast live oak is really known, once it becomes mature, to be really, really fire resistant. As a little kid or a teenager, it is toast. Literally, if it is caught in a fire, as well as typically its seeds. The charred bark, it exfoliates. If it starts to heal, it'll drop off the charred bark. It's pretty cool. Torrey pine from down in San Diego, beautiful pine in California, native, but not from this area. It has a very difficult time with fire. It is not known to survive well. Western sycamore is sort of in between. So sometimes it does okay, sometimes it doesn't. If it's deciduous, it has a much better chance. Thus, many of the sycamores that survived the fire in January are doing well. The coast live oaks. Here are some coast live oaks that have scorched trunks. And these trees, after we checked on them, appear to be thriving. We're pretty excited about it. All right, fire damage. Some of the fire damage is going to be evident, just like if any of us go through a fire. But there are some damage. There's damage, it's called stress, and trees go through stress also. The heat damage may not be apparent right away. It may be apparent that the foliage has been dropped, or it could be burnt. Scorch damage, sometimes if you go to the library next time, go to the back area where that little bench is around the big tall palm tree that is still there, a palm tree still there. It's a Canary Island palm. It lives through fires on the Canary Island. And you look up because you think it's fine, and you'll see a little scorch under it. And it's doing great. Many little things you would never know. If the fire gets under the bark, it can really do damage. So you have to look. You have to look. And then the soil underneath your trees is very, very important. It dries out in a fire. So there is desiccation, and water does become repellent. We see that, the soils become repellent, but the other materials that are part of the organic matter that starts to keep the soil healthy, it's gotten oftentimes burned. And lastly, almost all the fine roots of a tree are in that top 6 layers, 6-inch layers. And the water, the canopy is what you use to, outside of it is where you get all the water. So the tree almost channels all of the water to the edge, and that's why it's called the drip line. So what happens is you want to look at the soil, whether you're still having any of the roots could have been burned, and many of the fine ones have. So roots do adapt to fire. So some of the things we've seen in adaptations of these little trees, and even some of the acorns who are sprouting, is to how they're responding to the fire. Not many people have studied urban fires like this. We have, if you go out there, you're going to see people with LiDAR, these little things that are like, it looks like R2-D2 that are looking around. And they are doing a lot of research on the effects of fire on urban trees, because they realize this is a unique case and a unique opportunity. And one of the things they have noticed is that we're going to see some adaptation in these plants. We're going to want to follow and see what's happening. You're going to say, wow, look at that. And look at what the bark is doing here. Or look, the roots on this side aren't thriving, but on the other side they are. So the plants are amazing, living creatures. I don't know. I hug trees all the time. So there are, if your tree is stressed, it is susceptible to attack about a lot of things. Once it cracks, you can maybe get intrusion of water, intrusion of bugs, and the beetles. We have the shot borer beetles here, and it looks like somebody's taken a BB gun and just shot it at your tree. And they come in and they make a house, they invite the family, they have their neighbors, and then they take over the tree, and it's terrible. And then we have fungus, which is, many of the oak trees are very susceptible to the fungi. And then it's hard, if you've lost all of your foliage from any of your trees can get sunburned. That's why they have leaves, especially evergreen trees. And lastly, many of the watering systems that were plastic, that were in your homes, are gone. So how are you going to care for this tree if you choose to keep it? And we are trying to get grants so that we can help people with watering. And it's on 3 grants that we just wrote. Now that we are 501c3, we're just like, we're writing grants like crazy. But we're hoping to get enough grants so that we can help individuals keep the trees alive. Because the 5, 6, 7 water companies, I can't remember how many we have, but not all of them are still functioning as quickly as they should have. And we're going to do some workshops on how to set up a really quick irrigation system. We're going to do a couple of these coming up after I retire, and we'll be letting you know, because I think it's really important that we empower individuals. And any of you all members of Altadena? Yeah, it's pretty great. We're going to try to talk to whoever the precinct captains are and see if we can do little workshops with each of you. So that's coming out.
What is Altadena?
Altadena is a group of precinct captains that are neighborhoods that have joined together to, I would say, who's here that's really part of it that could better explain it? Yes.
I'm not a group captain, but it's organizing Altadena by groups that are no more than about 20 or 30 houses. And people cooperate.
Block captain.
Yeah, so they're block
Everyone has a
captains.
block captain, and they help each other in a variety of ways, just to cooperate. It's very loosely organized.
Very good.
Little group is kind of its own thing. So
They might have had
they
a
need to get- Yeah, they have already a lot.
Yeah, they've been growing quickly, and what's nice about it is that there is also the talk of bulk buying, so that if you don't have to have the same architect, but you might want to have the same contractor, and that contractor will bulk buy concrete for the foundations, see if they can get a price on the wood. So it's a really interesting model. And it's just check out Altogether.
One word.
.org.
Yeah, one word. .org. Okay, thank you. So if you look at your oaks, this is how you can check an oak. You take a little piece out, don't go taking a big piece out, and you pull it back until you can see some of the cadmium, and then you take a pocket knife and scrape it, and if you can see a little bit of sap, your tree has a terrific chance of recovery. These guys, in the very beginning, didn't even do this. So, this is a great little, here's one of our coast live oaks up in Upper Arroyo Seco Canyon. It's not really a canyon, but you know what I'm saying. And it's still shading and providing service to this trail. And a couple of birds and probably some squirrels. And then new bark forms after the fire, and it's really kind of cool to watch it. So you can see our oaks healing. Scorch damage. Scorch damage can be fatal. If you really put a flame to it, you can do a lot of damage to an oak. But you could also, if it's only on one side, how many times have you walked through Eden Canyon and seen a cooked side of an oak and the other side is flourishing? These are amazing trees. And we also have sap and resins that will come out, and they will be evident of stress on the trees. It's also an entry point for insects. But look at this. We have some new growth, and then we'll have a trunk growth. This means that the roots are viable. So all of these things are signs of hope, and they're important signs. So this is an oak off olive that was stunning, and as you can see, it suffered greatly. But both the owner and a very determined arborist are working to save this tree because it is at least 200 years old, and there's a real effort. It takes, commitment, and it's very heartening to me that you all are so invested in the beauty of this community. And lastly, a couple of other things you can see. You can see cracking of the bark. You can see this is a gash, and it comes from, if you look over here, right up there. That's a co-dominant stem. Now, what happens with a co-dominant stem, you have a crotch, and that crotch gathers dirt, and it starts to get icky, and bugs love it, and bugs then burrow in. It's a very weak space. And so you can see this crease here is the picture of the close-up of the crotch there, and it did burn in there. Actually, it caught embers, just like they say, you can catch embers in the spaces between your deck. So trees have that same sort of weakness at times. There's cracking more on this trunk, and you can see that it's an entry point for insects. But this tree is thriving, even though it had a couple of little cracks. We're seeing a really nice regrowth. And here's some nice other little signs of spring here. The redwood is showing its terrific new little growth out of the branch. And then we have an elderberry. All of these are California natives, and it's sprouting at the bottom. The elderberry is known as the tree of life. It provides fruit, housing, and to both humans and to many, many species. And then we have the lemonade berry. It does not taste like lemonade. Don't try it. And then you can see a few other sproutings that occur. All of these are signs that the tree is wanting to survive. And if you want to keep it, you can. So survivability is different than wildland fires. And size of the tree, I would say where it is, how it's bark, whether or not you have seen where the winds are coming from. Many of our trees are going to have a second life. But there's a difference between survivability and recoverability. It may survive on its own, but it will recover much better with us. And so you want to keep an eye out on this. Do you have presence of new shoots and leaves? Are there live branches? How close was it to the structure? Are you going to put the structure back there? Maybe it's better to remove the tree. Maybe you want to move the structure. It's brand new. The trees are hard to move. Maybe you want to move the structure a couple of feet away. So what are those decisions you need to make? What other action is? How is the root zone? So what is next? There are a lot of things you can do to keep your tree alive. And you want to make sure that you protect it when you do have construction. You want to put it underneath where your drip line is so that you are protecting that root system. You're trying to give it as much of a chance as you can. If there is mulch you can use. Now, people are going to say, don't use mulch during a fire zone. Well, you can use mulch until you put your house in there, and then you take the mulch away. You just want to protect it during this period of construction. So a lot of construction activities do have an effect on the oak tree. Just like your neighbor will say, how long are you going to be building that? You're going to say to your contractor, how long are you going to be building this? So it is going to take time. These are going to take monitoring, and it may take several years of restorative pruning. This is the Britain Fund. If you go to the Britain Fund, you can download this piece of paper. It's tiny, you don't have to read it. You might be able to scan that if you would like to, but it tells you the do's and don'ts of dealing with trees that have survived fire. So put a tree around that. How? Put a tree around put a fence around the tree. Sorry. It's very important that you put it at the drip line. And sometimes you can use that, I call it ski fencing, that's orange, or you can actually use chain link fence. That's what they used at Lanai over the Morton Bay fig that was there. They wanted to protect it. And you never know what's going to happen, but oftentimes contractors, and if you're a contractor, I love you, but you all like to park under trees. And those trees don't like it right now. So they need to be protected from anybody who wants to park underneath them. So you really need to inform your contractor what safety measures you want of your trees. And if you need help with getting water there, we are going to do, I told you in July, some irrigation classes on how to set up a very simple system that will water your trees. So we're still losing a lot of viable trees. I think I said earlier we lost 25 oak trees yesterday. 25 big oak trees. Here are their remains. There's one in the background, there's 4 others in the background, there's this one in the foreground. And you know what? It really is so disheartening to see these trees that were cut down because these new arborists are not following the agreements we have. And this isn't my property. I'm telling you, the lady who owns this property is livid.
Yes.
Livid. Because she thought she did everything right.
Well, she did.
And she did. So there is hope. There always has to be hope. Today I drove through Altadena again, and I looked at a couple of trees I worry about, and this wonderful, lovely Canary Island pine is up there, but it still has the marking. So I don't know if some fool is going to come by and say, oh, it has a marking. I hope not. And then here's the corner of Altadena. I can't remember the street, but if I think long enough, I will remember it. It's not far from Santa Rosa. But look at it. It's these trees. They are not oaks. Some of them are deodars. One of them is a eucalyptus. And the other, there are a couple of pine trees. They're still going to provide shade. They're still providing oxygen. And this tree, when we started at the beginning, if you saw the picture I showed you that had the car in the foreground and a tree in the background, this is our fair oaks tree. And that little coyote is right there. As a sign of hope. So this is a tree-loving community. These are people who have character, heart, and are a lot of fun. And I don't think we're going to lose as many trees as we could because we're fighters and we cherish these trees. And they are our legacy. They're the legacy for our children. They're a legacy for us. We're going to live long enough to love these. We're not going to live long enough to see the trees that we're going to be planting now. So let's cherish these survivors just as much as we cherish you all. So here's a little sign of hope. This is a little tiny patch, and it really is a fescue, which is a very nice little grass. And it's going to survive too. So thank you all very much. Any of you all, do I have time for questions?
Yes.
Sure, yes.
Well, I got several calls from Tetra Tech, and each time I told them they were not allowed to take out the trees, and then they would call again. And finally, some woman called, and I'm not sure. I think she may have been Army Corps. And I said, I am really tired of this. I am a certified arborist. I've told you over and over to leave more trees. And she said, I will put yellow ribbons around every one of your trees. And when it went up, she had. So my question is, do those yellow ribbons save the trees?
Yes, they're supposed to.
So we could even get yellow ribbons around every.
Well, we even had an evil thought of tearing out all the stupid SKU codes, but we knew that we didn't know. Yes, and I think her name is Melanie, the Army Corps has been responding because it's terrible PR for them. Yeah. It's their contractor. It's almost impossible to control some of these folks. They really are. You are an arborist, so you know that there are arborists who know certain things and there are arborists who don't. And so we're trying very hard to monitor these arborists as best we can. But we don't even know where they're going to be. We don't know whose house they're going to be clearing. We just drive around until we find out or somebody calls. And there are private phone numbers, so you can't call me at UCLA until July. But we will try to get out there as fast as we can. And you can call the Army Corps, and you can say, why are these people doing this? And I think the more we call the Army Corps, it's going to be effective in stopping what I think is, and I don't know if this is true, but it almost appears to me that the arborists who are marking the first ones are part of the team that is just doing the clearing. The second arborists are part of the teams that are taking the trees for tonnage and being paid by the tonnage. Because they are really strong arming people. And lying. So it's something we didn't really want to have to deal with. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. To replace the coastal oak that I have, there were two of them. One of them, it actually crossed both of my property and the neighbor next door. The neighbor next door decided to take it down. I didn't know anything about it. That's great. I want to replace that. What are the chances of me finding one? Not a 100-year-old one, but maybe, I don't know, 10-year-old one, because I understand you can find some mature ones. What are the chances of that surviving if I were to go that route?
Well, you would have to be a very good caretaker. There are a lot of oaks that have been transplanted around the Southern California. In fact, if you've ever played golf in Laverne, some of the oak trees up there were removed and then added back in, and they have to have a monitoring of about 5 years. But you can get them, and then they move them in the evening if they're big enough, because they have to go underneath wires and lift them up, because all of our roads are not really easy to truck a giant tree through. However, there are, this is California, this is Los Angeles, there's always going to be somebody building a development somewhere that you may be able to get hold of an nice oak. And there are brokers that take care of that. I would check with Devil Mountain Nursery. They're the ones who usually have the best.
Devil Mountain, is that here in Southern California?
Yes, it is.
They're wholesale, though. They're wholesale.
They are wholesale, but they are wholesale.
You could call them and ask where
Yeah.
you could get their trees.
They're in like Fillmore.
Yeah, they're in Fillmore.
Okay, when you say monitoring them, what does that really entail?
Well, it means that like every 6 months, you just want to make sure that it hasn't been through undue stress. You know, if it's, you would not want to put it in right now. You would
Yeah.
want to put it in probably October or November. And then you would monitor it through the winter, and then you would have to supplementally irrigate it until it was established. And that's why it says about 5 years. Marshall Canyon had about 35 of them, and I was there when we replanted them. I used to be the city of Laverne's landscape architect.
So I'm seeing babies come up.
Yes? You want to say them?
Should I be hopeful? Should I leave them as they are? Should I do anything in particular to try to keep them going?
Well, you can dig them up and put them in a pot and
It's okay to
nurture them. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I have a lot of volunteers that are kind of taking over my yard. I'm like, go on and take it over. We'll find out.
I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah, you should keep them. Because they're indigenous to
Exactly,
the area
to that
right
area.
now, so they're already adapted.
Right.
There was a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
Can you address palm trees?
Yes. Palm trees are like giant weeds. The ones that are the Mexican palm trees are, they're cherished here. It's not a California native. They don't provide any shade. But I don't think they're the evil firemongers that everybody has made them out to be. So if you have a palm tree and it survived, I mean, look at all the palm trees that survived up in Altadena. So you just have to keep them trimmed. Maintenance is really key.
Right.
In the area that we live in, and I live in the WUI too, the very high, insurance zone. No, that's not what it's called. But that's what it is. And if you don't keep your vegetation cleaned up and in order, I think it's going to be a problem in the future. And I think palm trees are fine. I mean, Canary Island palms are one of my favorite palms, and they're very, very fire resistant. The Washingtonia palms, the very tall palms that are iconic for California. They will catch fire, but let's be honest. If the fire is going up that high, it's hit other things too. They're not the torches that we're all talking about. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. One is that Edison comes by and they say, it's time to clip your trees.
Yeah.
And they need to be 5 feet below the power lines. And they don't tell you that they're coming, they just show up and start clipping your trees. So my husband looked it up and said they're supposed to let you have 30 days.
They are supposed to let you have 30 days.
The other they just tree clippers?
Well, I know two of the arborists for Southern California Edison because I met them when they were cutting trees out there. And they are qualified arborists, but they do hire contractors. And when you subcontract something, unless you're really overseeing it, I can't guarantee that they are a qualified arborist.
Okay, my other question is, if you're looking for a qualified arborist, a lot of people say, well, I work for an arborist company, so I know what I'm doing.
There are people who say that.
What do you look for when you're trying to hire a qualified arborist?
You're a qualified arborist. Are you ISA?
ISA, yeah, you can just check ISA and see if they are. If they're licensed, then it'll show you.
Yeah, it's a license
Certification.
It's a certified arborist, and they are people who have already been tested. And typically, the Western chapter of ISA is the largest chapter in the world. And so we have quite a few arborists here that are great. Are you a climber, or you're a consulting arborist, right?
I'm an arborist.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to consult, I don't want to $1,000.
Yeah, okay. So, but actually on our website, we have a couple of people who are arborists who you can call. And I guarantee they're all qualified. Two of them are teaching for UCLA Extension right now, and we have an horticulture class. Yes, ma'am.
Mine is related to when you were mentioning insurance earlier. So I think the fire department asks that you trim trees up from your roof within 5 feet.
Right.
But I hear stories, what I'm worried about now, our homes mercifully survive, but I'm worried that when it comes time for the insurance to renew, I want to do everything I can to, take away things they can nick me on. I've heard they require 10 feet, which is dumb, because that's not, you have to cut off really big branches in some cases for that, so.
Well, this is for another talk, but there is a new regulation coming out, and it's called the Zone Zero regulation.
Okay.
And it deals with the space between the structure and 5 feet out. It is not a regulation yet. It is a draft regulation.
Okay.
And one of the things that is being contested is that several of the suggestions are not based in science or even research. So we are I'm personally meeting with, just like the Army Guards, the Board of Forestry, and talking with them about what is a reasonable application of the Zone Zero requirements. And I know that there's research that the Forest Service has done, UC Davis has done, that says you can have well-maintained irrigated plants next to your house. You can have 5 feet away from the roof. The problem is if you have a flammable roof, it doesn't matter how far away that tree is going to be. So we're really pushing for home hardening and stop playing with the vegetation, because it costs the same to take trees down as it does to add to hardening your home, which is a better investment.
Is that a state?
It's a state regulation that's going through public hearings in which there have been hardly any public input.
And there's one problem with it too. They talk about you have to have this 100-foot defensible.
Oh, it's-
Some people's properties aren't that big.
Well, if y'all really want to invite me back someday, I'll talk to you about this, because shock and awe, you put that stupid little, 5 feet here, 30 feet here, 100 feet here, everybody on your block had no trees left. Nothing.
Right.
It's crazy. But, yes, sir.
It seems like we may have a unique opportunity here to work with Edison on not putting trees underneath lines and dealing with the undergrounding and that sort of thing. Do you have any thoughts about how the future might go there?
Well, undergrounding trees affects tree root. Undergrounding affects tree roots. So it's going to affect it either way. why you would plant trees underneath there is always a good question. Some of these lines have been put in after the trees, but I would say, you know, I went to that first Miss Michelle Zach's talk, and there weren't a lot of trees here when we started Altadena. So I think that in reality, Edison should be a little more responsive. Thank you all for coming. I hope you